Welcome back to Good Morning Vail. As we do every Tuesday, we check in with Dr. Dennis Lipton. He's with the Vail Valley Medical Center, and our topic today is radiation exposure associated with medical imaging. And this is a hot topic. We hear a lot about this and wonder what in our daily lives is causing this exposure, and what's too much and what's okay,
right.
What's safe.
Yeah, well, the last 20 years, as we were talking earlier, there's just been an explosion in the use of X-rays and CTs and all kinds of diagnostic imaging. And this is great because it helps us figure out what's wrong with patients and helps us see inside the body. But the downside is that a lot of these studies expose you to ionizing radiation, which is a carcinogen. So today I thought we'd talk about, just how much radiation are we talking about and when do we need to worry, and kind of how to look out for yourself to make sure you don't get
and the fact that it's actually measured, so we've
got
so
these measurements. The measurement is it's called millisieverts, is one of the measurements that we use. So normal annual exposure, this is about 3 to 6 millisieverts per person. In general, it's around 3.
Okay.
And this is the radiation we get from being outside in the sun, cosmic rays, radiation seeping from the soil, just everyday exposure to things like that. Now, living at high altitude, we're closer to the sun, so we get a little bit more, so probably on the range of 4 to 5. So by comparison, chest X-ray is about 0.1 millisieverts. So you can see you'd have to get, 30 or 40 of them to equal 1 year's exposure. So not very significant. Mammogram, by comparison, is about 0.4 millisieverts. So the average woman will get, 20 to 40 of these in her lifetime, probably, if she's doing what she's supposed to. Not really a clinically significant number. Now, when you start getting into the higher numbers is with CT imaging. CTs of the head, relatively small at 2 millisieverts. And then as you get into imaging larger body parts, complex body parts, chest, abdomen, pelvis, you get into the teens, anywhere from 14 to 15 millisieverts of radiation per study. So there's people out there that, have a lot of medical problems, and they'll get a couple of these, per year. So over your lifetime, this can really add up. We don't really see, for example, the average person has about a 37 to 44% chance of getting cancer throughout their whole lifetime. So this is kind of preliminary, sort of guessing almost, but we think that getting between 100 and 200 millisieverts of additional radiation might add like 0.5 to 1% to your cancer risk. So that's the kind of risk that we're talking about. Not really, really huge compared to something like smoking or that kind of thing, but it's out there.
And it's out there.
Yeah, it's out there, and when you count it over hundreds of millions of patients and getting all of these X-rays, it's it's measurable.
It definitely is. All right, and then the risk. We're taking a look at another full screen that gives us some details.
Yes. So one thing I put up there that we talked about is these airport scans that we all have to go through.
Yeah, I always wonder about that.
Right. So you go in there and you put your hands up and you kind of wonder what you're getting exposed to. So they use a technology called backscattering, which is really a tiny amount. So if I put the example up there, you'd have to get about 1,000 of those airport scans to equal the exposure of one chest X-ray. So really not anything to be concerned about. And the risk, obviously, we already talked about the cancer risk. We're talking millisieverts in the hundreds of extra millisieverts to really give you a measurable cancer risk. So the things I wanted to stress is that there's places that you can go and just pay for a full body scan, for example, a full body CT scan, and this will really expose you to a lot lot of radiation.
So
I would
don't
not recommend
gratuitously do this.
Right, you should save your exposure, minimize it as much as you can.
And try to have it localized too.
Something that's really medically necessary, and minimize it.
I like you said, no radiation with ultrasound or MRI.
Right. So the only thing, you can, especially in kids, because when you get the radiation exposure earlier, it has more time to do damage. So, in other words, getting 10 CTs before you're 10 years old, much worse than getting 10 CT scans after you're 75 years old, for example.
Well, Dr. Lipton, thank you so much for exposing us to some of this information. If you have any questions, you can contact him at the Vail Valley Medical Center. We have weather details with Leo coming up.